One voice that I think is critically important in thinking about Common Core implementation is the teacher's voice. In organizing these meetings, we've partnered with CTA to make sure that we have teacher leaders here with us to talk about the challenges of Common Core implementation, but the ways in which teachers need to be engaged. And we're fortunate today to have Oscar Hernandez from Kings Canyon Unified, who will talk a little bit from the teacher's point of view about the challenges of Common Core implementation.
Well, good morning, everybody. There's a couple of little journeys that I've been on that I think would be important for me to begin with, just to frame what it is that I want to say about the implementation of Common Core and specifically about professional development within that context. First of all, just kind of my teaching journey. I've been teaching for 20 years now, and I've really taught across the grade levels, nothing under 4th grade, because really, when they're that small, they kind of scare me, and I probably scare them. I started out in elementary school, teaching primarily 4th grade. And then I made a quantum leap and started teaching high school English for 15 years after that. The last 5 years I've been teaching in alternative education, again, in English. And then in addition to that, I'm adjunct faculty at Fresno Pacific University, where I teach in the teacher ed department. So you guys mentioned Sam, I know him well. So that's kind of my educational journey. Now, alongside with that was a journey that I took a few years ago. A lot of times when you see on the agenda CTA member, for many of you, because I know primarily administrators in here, it conjures up certain feelings. And when you see CTA or union, but my journey was a little bit different in that perspective. I was happy to be a member of the union, and I knew that there were good people taking care of me when it came to some of the things they have to take care of and bargain for health benefits and salaries and those types of things. But that was never anything that I was interested in. My involvement came when they put out a flyer saying that there was going to be a meeting if there were any teachers that had concerns. This was about, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. Any concerns about a company that our district had brought in to do staff development. And now, for my entire career, it was very normal for districts to provide professional development, and you would go to a training, and there were some that you would like, and just felt, wow, I have this big toolbox full of strategies and things I can use in my class. There were others that we didn't like, and well, we just didn't use those. But for the first time ever, this company that came in were not coming in with a toolbox of strategies to use. They were coming in to actually change our pedagogy. They were going to tell us exactly how we were supposed to teach, not what we were supposed to teach, and give us strategies for that. That was a giant shift that I had never seen in education before. So I said, I need to be involved. I need to be a voice here. So I went to the meeting. Actually, I didn't make the decision. I went to the meeting, voiced my concern. The next day, the president of our local called and said, how'd you like to be part of our executive board? So it happened that quickly. And shortly after that, continued to be involved with CTA, but not, again, so much on the side that other people are wonderful at doing. I was more involved on the curriculum instruction side of things. I was invited to be part of IFT, which is a nonprofit out of CTA called the Institute for Teaching, and they have some educational think tanks. Some of the districts represented here have some members there. Central has a couple people that we have from there on the think tank here in Fresno, as well as I'm on state council, and the subcommittee I'm on state council is on academic freedom. So obviously this is something that I'm very passionate about, because I feel that from the very beginning I was fortunate to have a teacher education program at Fresno Pacific where they kind of taught us the difference. At that time they really weren't talking about standards. If you remember, we had the frameworks, and they taught us that this is your guide, the frameworks, just like standards are today. Here's your guide. From that you are to build curriculum, and from that curriculum then this is where you come in. This is where your ability to teach and see teaching as a craft, to see teaching as a call to redemptive service. You are going back and you are going to do some wonderful things. Washington Union mentioned the 3 R's, which I love. I love that language, although there's a 4th R that many of you guys also implement, and I think in the context of Common Core, the idea of reflection is also really important to add. Plus, I've never been a big fan of the word rigor. Come on, I'm an English teacher, and you know that comes like from rigor mortis, something that you do to the death. Something you do to the death. I like to replace the R with the V. Let's make it not rigorous, but vigorous and full of life and wonderful. All right, so you might want to think about that, Washington Union. Anyway, and plus, good friends with your English lead over there, Kathy Troxel. She's awesome. Which is amazing. So I lost my train of thought because I got into my rigor-vigor thing. Anyway, so yeah, so then that's what you would do, is that you saw teaching as a craft, and with those R's that are part of it. As soon as I felt that the overemphasis on standardized testing was occurring, and that students became a number rather than become a human being, I felt that was problematic. I went from doing a lot of teacher training, even here at the Fresno County Office of Ed under Patty Lehman many years ago. Kind of somewhat of an expert in the area of literacy, especially with older struggling readers and English language learners. I kind of had to go into hiding because rather than seeing what I was doing as a teacher as something that was going to benefit students, I mean, the reading program that I put together at Reedy High School with a couple of colleagues, we were actually on the state website as one of the model literacy programs for California. But then when the overemphasis came on standardized tests, we were seen as not something that if I was to leave, somebody else could just be on page 3 and do it. This idea of alignment went overboard. This idea of teaching to a script kind of went, it went to the extreme. And at that point, I just kind of had to lock my door and just kind of do my thing without anybody knowing what I was doing. I was kind of in hiding. And so when the Common Core standards came out and I read through them, like always, as a critical literacy teacher, I wasn't 100% on board with everything that it was saying, but it sure was a giant leap forward. It surely was something much better than what we had been dealing with, because that was all, as was mentioned before on the panel, it went from memorizing skills to now let's apply. I loved what the superintendent said. It's not just going taking a test for your permit, but it's actually getting behind the wheel. That was a great analogy. So I was much more excited about Common Core and have been advocating for them still, with the critical lens. My biggest view of it from the critical lens that I would say, since there are mainly a lot of administrators here and superintendents, is to always be very careful and be aware of the people that aren't seeing our students as children, as students and as learners, but they see them as giant dollar signs. Beware of those companies, because they're really not out for the interest of the student, they're out to make a buck. So as you look at programs and people that have some things to offer you, just keep that in mind. And that's probably one of my biggest criticisms of Common Core, is that it's allowing people to just kind of make money off of our students, and that really shouldn't be the goal. So the transition into professional development is that I really feel that teachers need to be involved, obviously, in that process, whether it is a program or some things that you're looking at. I love what Central was saying, that it might not be a textbook cover to cover. Those kinds of things have to shift, and this is where bringing in the right kind of professional development is going to be very important. And not only bringing it in, but also giving some of your teachers and teacher leaders the autonomy to go out. For this particular time, money was very few, especially if we're PI school, we can only use our PD money for this. And now hopefully that's going to be opened up. If you have some leaders that want to do some state conferences, some national conferences, because here's the difference. A lot of times the little local conferences, they give you like a nice little toolbox, a bag of strategies to use. But when you go to the state conference, especially these are your teacher leaders, you're going to be talking about the people that they need to go and have like some strong pedagogy. They need some strong theory, so that when someone walks into their classroom or somebody shows up to their workshop that they're giving, they can back up everything that they're saying, and they can say, well, here's the research and the theory behind it. Dean Vogel, the president of CTA, says that teachers are divided into these categories and percentage-wise. He says that there are the 5% of teachers that give everybody a headache. They give everybody a headache, and you know who they are. You probably could name those right now if you're a site administrator. And what can we do? We have that 5%. They're the ones that end up on the news and are filing grievances and doing all of that. He says that there are 5% of the people on your staff that are your stellar, just amazing teachers. These are your teacher leaders. These are the teacher nerds. I'm gonna have to raise my hand on that one. They're your teacher nerds. They read every professional development book that's out there. They attend national and state conferences. I mean, they really just want to be the best that they can be and are. And people look to them. Their classrooms are visited. They're always seen as model teachers. And then you have that 90% that want to be like the 5%. They're in the business for all the right reasons, and they really are striving to be that top 5%. I've never met somebody that says, I want to be like that, that guy down there, that's always getting in trouble. They usually are striving for that. So if you think about that, that's 95% of the teachers that are really workable, teachers that you can actually trust. What happened during the kind of the CST or standardized phase of the educational journey that our country went on the last few years since 1997 is that teachers weren't trusted very much, and we felt it. I knew that I wasn't being trusted to make decisions. And a lot of times, again, those were mandates that might not have been coming from your site administrators, but they were coming from somewhere above. And we just didn't feel like we were being trusted as professionals, that we had to be watched all the time. This idea of accountability that we would hear about on the news all of the time. At the same time, the surveys that were done independently were saying that teachers were one of the most trusted professions in the world. And in the country, and even in the Central Valley, where we think that, well, they're hearing different things on the radio, but even here in the Valley, the research was showing that we were very much trusted as professionals. I'd like for you to consider going back to that, and it sounds like from the panelists, it is going back to this idea. The PLCs are important as long as they are not top-down. So PLCs is a great way to kind of develop your professionals, but if it starts out with, top administration, mandating things or giving an agenda to the teacher leaders who then take that down to their teachers, it's not going to work, because what you're going to have is what you've had for many years. You're going to get compliance. And what you want to do is you want to have commitment from the teachers. So when you can get the top-down mandates, but with the energy that comes from the ground up, you're going to find that what's going to happen is you're going to create some wonderful change from from the teachers and for the school in general, and especially with the implementation of Common Core. Panelists also mentioned something that I'm going to refer to as, at least in California, I'm going to refer to it as CST Stockholm Syndrome, okay? People cannot make the paradigm shift. They cannot make the shift from the old CST, standardized focus on testing, to Common Core, and somebody addressed that earlier. We see it a lot, and really, even though someone said that, this is just kind of dovetailing or adding to it, I'm not really sure, because the way I kind of see it is that if you're still in the old model, you're really trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It really is a paradigm shift. The idea that we're actually getting kids to, to think critically about things, to apply their knowledge, that's a big paradigm shift. I'll give you a quick example. At one of these trainings that I attended, that the district had, mandated that we go to with one of these outside companies, I'm on camera, so I'm not going to mention the name, but you probably know who it is. You had to kind of follow this little litany, and I remember raising my hand, and the example that they were giving is, they always had the same like fourth grade example, and we're all high school teachers, but it was always the same little fourth grade example. What is a simile? And so. So you go through their whole little litany of things to do, and then at the very end, you bubble in, this is a simile, not this, and you bubble it in. And so I raised my hand, I said, at this point, are you done with the lesson? And they're like, yeah, now you move on to your next, little standard that we've, taken apart and cut up into the smallest little piece of minutia. So I said, well, when do they get a chance to show what they have learned? When do they get a chance to actually write something where there's a simile involved? Do they get a chance to do that? Is there time for application? Well, if it goes with your scope and sequence and curriculum map or whatever, so basically the answer was no. This was about knowing what a simile was simply for the test, as opposed to, do they get a chance to apply it? I feel Common Core is asking students now to apply their knowledge, not only to learn and memorize it. So really, from the teacher perspective, I guess that's the only thing that I really have to say is make sure that you're involving your teachers in the process. Our transition at our district, I would not say would get as high a points as what I heard today from Central and Washington Union. And I'm not going to blame our current CNI person. I hope she gets to know you. She's great. She was a great teacher and a great principal, and now she got the new CNI position. So I hope she does more work with Fresno County. Our former person, not so much, and I feel guilty because I was on the panel that hired her, but and I got in trouble for that, but not so much. And here's the difference. One of the differences, of course, is that what was set up, and her parting gift was having us work in the transition to Common Core with another company that still didn't get the fact that it was a paradigm shift. They were still trying to get us to do Common Core using still the mentality of preparing for CSTs. And again, it just doesn't fit. The first part sounded great because they identified some teacher leaders, and then by department, by grade level, and they said, develop some curriculum. Well, when I heard that, I was excited. You know, I was like, okay, I'm out of hiding now. I get to do this. Sat down with a couple of colleagues in the English department from the different high schools, and we started to develop some curriculum, and we just had a great time. Our job was, let's make this transition easier for our teachers. And so we're just gonna provide some resources and then, you know, see how that goes. Well, little did we know that like by day 3, they were having us fill in little dots and taking every standard apart. I mean, it was a mess. At that point, I was like, I really don't want to be part of this. Now, the first part was fine. Then the phase 2 of that is that I went to our local, and you know, because we do have fairly good communication with our district office, I went to our local union and got together with some others, and we decided that what we want to do is kind of take a step back, and that what I was able to experience with my few colleagues, that should be experienced with all teachers, that all teachers should have the opportunity to sit down with each other and be able to develop some you know, wonderful curriculum that was relevant, rigorous, and that would also kind of include those 4 C's that Central was talking about, because again, you know, those are essential as well, but that this should be opened up to all teachers, and that we, if they identified as teacher leaders, we wanted to kind of work more as teacher facilitators. Not we were the ones that knew everything, but that we would be able to kind of sit around and be able to facilitate those conversations among our colleagues. There was something in an earlier slide that we've also had to address, is this issue of the pre-1997 teachers and the post-1997 teachers. And yes, we need to bring them along because this is all new to them. For their professional career, they have been handed scripts, and they've been handed scope and sequence, and they've been handed textbooks that say go from A to Z. So for them, and they are full of ideas. I mean, and they are very savvy to, you know, all around, especially technology and those types of things. But we do need to kind of bring the pre and the post together, and you know, give them a voice, allow them to develop some wonderful curriculum, as well as allowing them to develop them, well, let's just use the language, to develop themselves as professionals through, you know, conferences, good books, collaboration, and I think those are a winning combination. So thank you for letting me share.